All right, we are now recording. I'm just going to quickly show you the fetch API for JavaScript. With Python, we've got the requests library, and one real nice thing about that is it handles a lot of the promises and asynchronous calls. Does anyone know what I mean when I say asynchronous? What an asynchronous function could be? And why you'd want one.
It's like the
Somebody,
function completes before, or maybe not
yeah,
completes, but goes to the end before it finishes doing all its processing.
yeah. So that's, that's, yes, that is an asynchronous function. It can go out of order. In any kind of scripting language like JavaScript or, well, technically, definitely Python, um, the function will run and expect things to happen immediately. If you're writing some Python, well, I guess we're talking about JavaScript. If I'm talking JavaScript here, and I've got a function, I'm doing this outside of it. I'm going to do a function called like my func. Uh, Normally, with a script, if I were to let object be set to this something and then down here I want to console.log object something. That's fine because we start the function, we get here, and then this is ready. But what if this didn't happen immediately and then we get to line 10? It's going to blow up. And the reason it wouldn't happen immediately is if this isn't being set here, this is actually going to make a call somewhere. So we're firing off to some website, taking some JavaScript, or sorry, JSON, coming down and then setting in this variable. But before that's ever happened, we're going to run through the rest of the function. So an asynchronous function can allow for the await statement, which is going to say, hey, just hold on for a second. Don't run until I'm done with this. And that's basically it. Um, and that's something we're kind of get a little bit into with like fetches, I think. Do I have? Yeah, we do have waits in here. It does double check it. And with the request library with Python, you're like, oh, I knew how to do that before. It's like, yeah, you have, but Python kind of takes care of it. Fetch isn't going to do that right out of the box for us. So we're going to have to tell it exactly what we want. So just to kind of display this, I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible because I'm going to be throwing a lot of JavaScript code at you that you're not going to like just looking at it. But I'm going to kind of explain it as simply as I can, break it down, and then I'm going to add more to it as we go. Because I could just give you a big code block and say, hey, this is how you do GET requests. Do it the way I said, and be on your way. But I don't want to do that. I would like to at least kind of give you an idea of what's going on. So basically, real quick, I set up a Flask application. Remember, Flask's super great. This is my whole darn web server. Bringing in Flask, bringing in requests, bringing in cores so I can actually hit this thing from a different application. So React is going to be able to hit the Flask app because I did this. I've got a single route here. It's a single /. It receives GET requests and POST requests. Sounds easy, right? If it's a POST type request, we're going to return a JSON object with a key of response and a value of POST request received. If it's a GET request, we're going to say GET request received. Let's make that capital, make it a little bit more consistent. Makes sense, right? Nothing too complicated going on here. This is the last time I'm going to show the app.py. Any questions, ask now, but I'm going to close that for now. Here is a full-blown React application. And by that, I mean I did npx create React app and made an app called app. I cleaned up a little bit, but this is still a functional type React application. Let's clean that out. Don't need that anymore. All I have added to this so far is I have created a state of response and set response. these buttons here, they are just a button, and each of them has an on-click method called get handler, post handler, which I still need to write, and then they're marked with the words get and post. Before we do that, though, before we build these methods out, I want to kind of show you the way I would expect you to set up your calls in React. There are many ways to do this, and again, it's JavaScript, it's Wild West. Try it my way, at least look at my way. If you don't like it, that's fine, but this is what I kind of have been shown to do and what I think makes sense. I've got a folder within source. Yeah, that makes sense. Within source called API. And then I've got API.js, completely empty. Within here, I'm going to define some fetch request functions. These I will then pass on to other places so that I know, I've got my fetches built so that whatever page needs them, for whatever components needs them, it can just refer back to this API.js file and form these kind of requests, get request, post request, what have you. So very first thing, I'm going to show you how to do an asynchronous function if you're not aware. It's like this, async function. I am going to call this function the get fetch. I can call this anything I want, but I'm going to call it get fetch to keep it separated, because we're going to do a get type and a post type. Only because I kind of want to show you how a post differs. We open this thing up from here. I'm using the word response a lot, but it does mean the same thing each time we're talking about. So I'm going to set a constant called response. I could do a let, it doesn't really matter. This is going to await a fetch. A fetch can take, I think it can take a few different parameters, but the first thing it can take, and the thing that it absolutely has to have, is somewhere to go. It needs a URL. So I'm going to just paste in my local host, which is running. Let's start this thing up actually. Let's run. That's where I got this. Sorry, I stole it from my notes here, but that's just my Flask application. And I'm just going to hit that actually. Is that what I want to do? Yeah, that shouldn't break anything. So I've got a response. It's just going to be the result of creating a fetch request to my app. Remember, this is going to be a get. I haven't specified anything. It's going to default to a get. And it should give me this response object, which is going to have a key of the word response and a value of get request received. Here, I need to turn it into JSON. I need to make sure it's actually JSON. What this response object is going to give us back is, I believe, a promise. And you can look into that if you would like. I'm not going to try and explain it in my bad JSON, but it returns a promise object, which we just need to JSONify. So real simple. We're just saying, again, this, these two lines here, not real complicated. I'm setting a response. It's going to be whatever the fetch does, whatever the fetch returns, and it's going to wait for that. Before response is set, it has to await this fetch. Then I'm going to set a result. It has to await response. So once response is actually run its course, it's going to turn that into JSON. And then we're just going to return that result. Very simple, not too complicated. Let's continue with this in app.js. I know what you're probably thinking. You guys are all React, journeymen at this point. You're probably as good as I am at it, and you're thinking those should be components, Jordan. Well, you're right, but I'm only trying to zero in on just the one thing I want to show you. What I'm going to do with this. So I'm going to import API from API. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm bringing in this. Something I do have to do because JavaScript. I need to export this function so that someone can see it. Get fetch. That's it. So now when I reference this, file, I can actually go see it. Not positive how necessary this is, and I get my exports and imports a little mixed up in JavaScript, but this works. App.js. Let's create this handler. So we'll ignore post for right now, and let's find some way to get that information. So from the API, I'm going to create a function that pulls that in because we've got it set. We've got that function set. Now we need to actually pull it in to our app.js and do something with that. I'm going to call this get handler. Oh, wait, sorry. Arrow functions. I'm going to reference API and then get fetch, and I will invoke it. What I'm doing here now is then we're going to set a variable. I'm going to call this, we could also call this response. You could call it longer, more complicated things than that. You don't have to. I should have double checked what .then does, shouldn't I? I think I need to look that up and respond to you guys. I forget why this needs a .then here. In fact, it may not, but this is what I have in my notes. I forgot to look before class because I suck. So from there, we are going to set state real quick. Easy peasy. Set response. Response. So this handler, when clicked, when this button is clicked, should run an API fetch, sending us to API, running this fetch here, this get fetch. And then when it receives that response, it's just going to set response in state using whatever that is. I think older Jordan decided that response isn't such a good thing to call this. Oh, that's going to mess it up. Does it work? Older Jordan liked to say API JSON response, just to be darn clear what we're talking about here, right? This is the API's response JSON. You don't have to call it that, but I, like to keep things a little bit more clear. So a little bit. Looks good. All right. So that is what the get handler should do. Let's try it. Sure, I don't have any mistakes here. Wonderful. So pull it up so you can all see it. Here's my React app. It's just got a button in it. Recall, this button has an on-click method called getHandler. It also just has the word get on it. So that's definitely our button. It's got the big old word get on it. When I click that, it will hit this function here. Go to API, run the get fetch function we just built here, which is going to try and set a response variable. It's going to set it to by the way, it's an asynchronous function. We're going to await whatever this fetch gives us. It should return this promise. Then we're going to set a result equal to whatever we need to await, whatever that response is, turn into JSON, and we'll return it. So hitting this is going to give us a JSON object. All we're going to do then is once it's received, we're going to set state. Once we've set state, remember, set response is going to be how we set state. We're doing it right here. Right now, the basic, or sorry, the default state for response is just a an empty string here. That's why you don't see anything else on this page, even though I've got H2 set. Once response is set, it should trigger that to basically it's going to reload this and show us whatever response.response is. What is response.response? Why didn't you just call it response, Jordan? Remember, it's a JSON object. If you try to write JSON to the page, React's going to blow up and say, I don't know what to do with that. I'm not going to print that out for you, dude. you have to either give it the values or you have to do something beyond that. It's not going to render JSON to the page. It can't do that. It's only going to respond with like an actual object, I think, or definitely strings, something it knows what to work with. A JSON is too complicated for it to just spit it out in a way that we haven't told it to do so. So I'm doing response because that response object is going to be, don't forget, this. So I'm doing response object dot response, which is the key. So that should just be the value. When I press this button, get request received. So cradle to grave, that's what just happened here. Any questions? I know that was a lot, but I feel like we've stepped through it. If there are no questions about that, I'm going to show you how to do a post. It's also very simple. With an app.js, let's just uncomment out that button. And you're going to love this. That's about it. That's all I'm doing. I'm still just hitting the API, taking a response from it, and then doing something with it on this page. So that's done. Nothing crazy there. I could get real smart with my JavaScript and find out a custom hook that takes an HTTP verb and then formulates a function with it. We're not going to do all that. We're keeping it simple right here. I've got two functions that look very similar, but I'm just showing you. But keep in mind, we haven't created this yet. So what is different between a get and a post? I'm going to show you. They are fairly similar. But as you can kind of guess, we need to tell it probably that it's a post type. And this isn't the best explanation of it because I'm not giving it an object, but I'll show you how I would do that. All right. Oh, I'm not in Vim. That doesn't go up. Bounce it between Vim and VS Code. J goes down, K goes up. All right.
Hans,
Okay.
stay on the keyboard.
Yeah, I need to. It's not good for showing y'all. Okay, here's what I call a simplified post fetch. So look at the difference. Like, it's a lot of extra stuff, but it's not really. The only thing that I added is this, I think. Right? Let's see. Yeah. Where's that hint? Right there. What's this guy from? Okay. Yeah. So notice this fetch has one thing in it. All I'm doing right now is I'm adding post stuff over here, but post stuff happens to be an object. Again, I don't like looking at JavaScript, and I think some of you may not either, because this is hard to look at. But notice what I actually really truly did here. I've got response, await, fetch. There's where I'm going to hit, and I'm putting a comma here. So what is the second argument? All of this is the second argument. All this right here is within an object. That is the second argument. All this right here is like second arg, right? But it is actually an object, and this is what it looks like when you blow it up. So its first key. So here we are. We're opening an object up. Its first key is headers. I'm passing in a content type application JSON. I don't actually need this, but I'm showing you how I would pass in a JSON object, which would be basically I would do like body or something, and then it would be like JSON object, which would be an actual thing. But we're not going to go into that. I don't want to do that too much yet. It'll be complicated. But this is right here the important piece I want you to show you. This is how I make this fetch request a post type. I've got some headers here, and I've got the method. This is another key. There's a key in the object. There's another key in the object. Type sorry, the value is post. So that's what separates these two. I need to open up an object and tell it what type of method this is. We'll get more into how to pass in other things, because obviously a post request, sometimes you want to send a form, you want to send an object or something like that, or a dictionary if you're talking Python. We'll get into that. Not right now. My post only just said, hey, you're a post, hey, you're a get. Very simple. And then it's the same. Nothing else beyond that. Let's add this in here. App.js is already doing that. Did I do this right? Oh, no. Sorry, guys. I left you all straight. Don't forget, I just took the get handler and posted it down or dropped it down and made a post handler. We need to be doing this because the API get fetch, this one's going to be doing the API post fetch, which we just wrote just now over here. So this button should be doing the same kind of thing. When I click, let's see, let's refresh our page, make sure we actually got everything here. Oh yeah, look at that, it came back. I will click this button, whichever button I hit. If I hit the post, it's going to go to this post handler, which goes to the API file for that post fetch. It's going to run this asynchronous function, post fetch. It's going to set a variable called response. It's going to await the response of this fetch here, which is to this URL. And it's going to also pass in some stuff that says, hey, I'm a post type method. You're gonna see me and you're gonna see the word post, which means I'm a request.method equals post, which means I'm gonna get this and not this, because that's the get. It's gonna set up a result, which is gonna be JSON. It's gonna return that result. This is packaged up, sent out as post fetch. It's gonna return that, or sorry, it's gonna receive that. When it's done, it's going to set this variable here, API response JSON, or rather okay, I do know what then does. Then is saying, hey, whatever you get from there, when it's done, once that asynchronous function is done, then the response of it, the result of it, you can do things with. And what I'm going to do with that, once this is set, once the asynchronous function is run, this is the result of the asynchronous function. You're going to run this, whatever's in this code block here. This is like the function. This is anything within, a normal function brackets. I'm going to run set response, and it's going to trigger the set response for state, setting state, whatever the output of all this work here that I've deemed API response JSON. You're going to set state with that object, and then H2 is going to refresh, because that is an object with a key that has response in it. So response.response. If the word response is driving you insane, change it. Do what you want to make it make sense to you. If you're going to get confused with the number of times response is used, just change it each time. Say, this is the response from the call. This is the response from the object. This is the response from the method that I built on this page, the component, however you want to do that. Do that for yourself. I'm just kind of showing you a little bit more conventional route. So get works, post works. That's firing off a post request. That's firing off a get request. Applause. Everything's working great. But Jordan, you said this was going to get worse. It is. Let's take a look at these functions here. They're simple. All they're doing is assuming this works, and if it works, it's going to do this, and if that runs, it's going to do this. But what if it doesn't work? What if this URL changes, right? What if I kill this server and then I keep trying to fire some stuff off? Oh man, oh no, what's going on? Well, let's see in our console. Are we getting any good stuff here? We're getting all kinds of weird stuff. This is a lot of output here. Not a lot of good output either, and not very useful for a user to read. We didn't capture the error. We didn't do anything with that. So I'm going to show you how to complicate this a little bit. and make it better. So we've seen try and catch in Python, I think, right? Have we done that? Have y'all seen try catch in Python? I'm the instructor, I
Yes.
should know. Okay. We're going to do that in JavaScript. It's important. Don't roll your eyes and say, Jordan, it'll work every time. It won't work every time. Try. All right. So within this try, we're going to actually run this bit of code. So try to go do that. Try to go do that thing that you said you could do. Go do a fetch request. Seems simple enough. But if you get an issue with that, if the response is in any way not okay, now don't ask me exactly what okay means. We can look that up together. But if the response is not okay, throw new error status response.status. So if the status basically, I believe, is if that's not a 200, that's what I'm going to guess. It's going to throw an error and give you, hey, this is what happened. We had a response error. We didn't get what we wanted. Assuming that runs through, just do what you were supposed to do, right? So we've got a try that's going to run this. If there's any errors, it'll catch it. If there's anything wrong with the response, it's going to say, hey, there's something wrong with the response. We actually need to give it something to do with that error, though. How does this go? We need to catch it. Error. So any errors that are thrown up, we're just going to console.log them. It's all done right. Does this look good? I think it does. It's broken. Line 2, did I make a mistake? Give me just a second. What did I not close? I love JavaScript. Pretty sure that's exactly what I've got right here. I'm going to share this with you when we're all done, just so you guys can kind of copy paste it and play with it. But here's the new GET request. So try to fetch. If the response is no good, throw an error. Otherwise, we good. If you did catch that error, log it. Makes sense? Does this look a little bit safer? One thing I neglected to do was see what this actually looks like. So let's see what happens if our Flash server's not running. We still got a bunch of stuff. Type error, failed to fetch reading response. I mean, we still got a bunch of junk, don't we? Does our server catch that? And why does this not look any different? Maybe a 500 error is not the best to show off. I should have found a better example. I don't think it's dealing with my 500 quite as much as I'd like. But rest assured, having some error handling in your API call is definitely going to help you out. Prepare quite as much as I should have. The post request is going to look very similar. It's just got all the same stuff in there. Still just checking for the response type, and then we're spitting out an error otherwise. But I want to show you what it's really doing, because this is kind of a conventional way to make these calls, but this is, like 13 lines of code. Whereas in Python, you'd probably just get it done in like 2 or 3. But I want to just show you this, say, hey, copy paste this. This is how you're going to run your functions. You need to kind of have an understanding of what they're doing. And again, these are going to get even larger as you start passing in more information. So besides my error not really looking quite the way I wanted, are there any questions?
So is the error not working because if the server's off, there's no response object at all generated, or is it still going to generate?
I think it is trying this and it is kind of making it even louder because I'm not only just failing the fetch, I'm now failing the fetch, catching the error, console.logging that error, and kind of giving more information on why it failed. So a little bit easier to troubleshoot if it was something that was like not a 500. But right now, yeah, we're straight up not responding. So we're just getting a ton of output. Basically, hey, your fetch has failed. It's been blocked by cores. That's not really true, but you don't know. Again, this is why 500 errors are one of my favorite questions to ask in interviews because God, who knows? You can just drill people all day on what the things could be. But basically, because my app had to be, I set this app up here to allow for cores. That's not really a thing anymore. So now React is trying to hit something. It's saying, hey, I can't hit that. That's not for me. A cores error. It's also failing to fetch. I think this is our actual error here that we're printing. API.js. There it is. So line 12, this console.log right here, notice everything else is in red, but this one's ours. We console.log this. Type error, failed to fetch. So you can kind of freak out with all this other stuff because look what's going on. Type error, cannot read properties of undefined reading response. So we tried to read response in line 25. So here in line 25, we're saying, well, I don't have a response anymore. You changed me. How can I run response.response? My error, my fetch failed. This one also, yeah, that's the same thing. An error above occurred in your app. My static's blowing up. All kinds of stuff. However, you can kind of ignore all that because we are getting this console.log that we can focus on. Don't worry about cores response. That's not actually true. Don't worry about 403 forbidden. Well, that's just because it thinks cores is broken. This here is blowing up saying, I can't do that. You're telling me to run dot response on something that doesn't exist. This is kind of doing the same thing. These duplicated. And then this one's saying, oh, my app is just broken. Now I'm breaking other things. It's a lot of noise. It's a heck of a lot of noise. And I mean, I can sit here and read through it and it makes sense. But really, this is the only thing that we care about because we caught that error, failed to fetch. Oh, you know, if I focus in on this, I'm saying, oh no, my response object doesn't have a key of response. What the heck? So I go digging over here. I'm like, well, no, it does have a key of response. Okay, maybe that key is not getting in here. And I can go chase that around. There's a lot of other things that could be wrong. But first and foremost, before any of that truly happened, even though it doesn't quite look like that, what's the word, like time-wise, chronologically, notice this is something we created. This isn't red. This is a console.log. We caught the error and we told ourselves, hey, from the very get-go, you failed to fetch. Now, we could probably do better error handling to say why you failed to fetch and really dig into that. But we did catch the error and we spit it out to the screen. So you can kind of ignore a lot of this other noise because like the whole point with having like an await, we have to make sure the fetch runs before anything else happens. It failed and it continued and ran. Everything else tried to do all this stuff with it and created all this noise for you because a 500 error, is a fail. It didn't respond, but our app tried to run with it anyways. You can ignore all that. We got an error right here that should tell you from the get-go, hey, you don't need to look at app.js. You don't need to look at app.py. Well, maybe you do, but don't go looking anywhere. Go looking right here at the beginning. It had an error and we caught it. So start here, please. So I could have spent a little bit more time like building up some good scenarios for how this error could help us. But you can kind of see it here. We know what, at least where we should start looking first, because all this other stuff is just noise. Does that make sense? Does that not make sense?
How are you calling get fetch from your app.js?
I'm
It's like you
calling
said.
that. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's like you typed API dot get fetch.
Yep. So again, there's probably other ways I can import this in. This is the way I'm choosing to do it. I am importing this variable API. What is that variable? That variable is this, whatever is returned from this file. Basically, it's kind of making it a class, but don't repeat that. That's not really what it's doing. Um, it's saying, hey, everything from that file is API. And then API.getFetch is because I sent out this getFetch, which is this original function name getFetch. So hey, file.getFetch is what I'm doing. That's how it's calling it. The way I've imported it, I said import, this is a variable, I can call this whatever I want, import API from the API file, and then to evoke those, I do API.getFetch as if it were a class. Don't let that confuse you that it's not a class, it's a file with functions in it, and I'm running file.function.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question though. I definitely skimmed over that. Any other questions? I will post this somewhere. I'll put it on my GitHub. I'll make it public and I'll share it in the channel. So y'all can fiddle with this if you get to that point in your assignment today. Also, you will be getting to fetches on, I think, Thursday, but it's just not covered in as much depth as I kind of wanted it to be. And they have you doing Axios, but they also mention fetches, and I think this is a good way to do this. And I want to show you a good, smart way to set up your fetches so that you can catch your errors a little bit better. Just like Django, React is a full-blown framework. It is a new thing, and you can spend a ton of time chasing errors that you think are React errors that are actually JavaScript errors, or chasing JavaScript errors that are actually your server's not running errors. You just waste a ton of time. So having functions that catch their own errors and perform, these tasks smartly can save you so much time troubleshooting all this. You can just wait. I would hate to see you guys like waste 10 20 hours on your personal projects just chasing something that you could have easily caught in an error. But that's it. Off the soapbox. I'm going to just stop recording